Matt Fradd is an internationally acclaimed evangelist, author, and podcast creator. He is the founder of Pints with Aquinas, the immensely popular podcast with almost 800,000 followers, which has just recently been picked up by the Daily Wire. He was on campus to speak to our students about his latest book, Jesus, Our Refuge. We invited him to the studio to discuss the cultural landscape, the state of Catholicism, and his newest position as a voice for the Daily Wire.
Benedictine College is transforming culture in America, one conversation at a time. From our studios in Atchison, Kansas, these are the Benedictine Dialogues.
All right, Matt, welcome to the Benedictine Dialogues.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you here on campus. I've known you via social media and other acquaintances for many years. It's really great to actually meet you in person.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really good.
I often find that I'll see people online so much that then I meet them and think we've met before. I think I thought that today.
That's funny. Well, I know eventually I want to talk to you about the big news of your new role that you're going to be taking on. But to start off, I thought I'd love to hear from someone like you who you've been an evangelist, an apologist. You've been working in the church for, 15, 20 years, something like that. I'd love to get your take on kind of the current landscape of the church. How are we doing? Is there, the division is obviously felt, but I often wonder how much of that is online versus in real life. Kind of what's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's hard to know, isn't it? If you spend a lot of time online, you think the world is one way, and then you go out and communicate with people and think, must be entirely different. So I'm not sure. Well, I think there seems to be a resurgence or a reinterest in looking into the Catholic faith. And why is that? Well, obviously the new atheism had its day, and I think it was shown to be not as intellectually rigorous as it promised. And then you had sort of wokeism that was just utter nonsense. I'm thinking of the extremities of wokeism, like men being able to have periods and these sorts of things. And so it's almost like we collectively woke up and went, maybe Christianity wasn't as crazy as we thought. I'm not sure if Jordan Peterson was something of a gateway drug for people,
sure.
And Bishop Barron certainly and others, to start looking at Christianity with interest again. But you can't live a meaningless life, especially if there's no good reasons to think that it's meaningless. If there's compelling reasons to think that God exists and that Christianity might be true, then certainly you should give that a listen before adopting a sort of absurdist view of the world. So I think a lot of people are returning to Christianity. One thing I want to encourage in myself and other people, and I'm sure you do too, is a desire for our own sanctification. Online is a dangerous place where we can jump on bandwagons, point at people, make fun of people, mock people. I remember it was Matt Walsh who said if the internet can choose between mockery and sympathy, we'll always choose mockery. And so there's a lot of that online. But I hope that those who are looking into the Catholic faith will be more interested in repenting of their own sin, and as opposed to pointing the finger at people we deem crazier than us or more sinful or something like that. Does
that makes total sense? I think because part of what I'm concerned about is that some of the conversions are coming from this desire to kind of one up the other side, if you will, kind of fight against the wokeism as opposed to really falling in love with Christ.
Like edgelording is the word, I think.
Is that what it's called? Okay.
Yeah, this sort of autistic need to edgelord and keep becoming more and more based.
Yes, that's my concern. That's what I'm worried
thankfully
is
that's becoming something of a parody of itself. And I agree with that, It is interesting how these things go off in culture and feel tremendously powerful, but then sometimes they dissipate. Like, do you remember the new atheism when that hit the world? Didn't
Absolutely.
it? You're more of an intellectual than I am. I felt myself influenced by it or nervous about it. When Richard Dawkins would make claims like, if you're raising your children Christian, this is a form of child abuse. I remember, rejecting that immediately, but part of me worrying, and it felt like an unstoppable force at the time. And now it's like not even a thing. It's not even close to being a thing.
Yes.
Like the best of the new atheists tend to be more open-minded people who aren't scorning or scoffing at their Christian friends.
Yes.
And so I think whatever we're seeing, aberrations that we're seeing on either side of the spectrum right now that might feel loud, I don't know what purpose they serve or what good is coming from them, but it's best to keep our eyes on Christ, the commandments of the church, and
You're an internationally traveling apologist, speaker, and the like. this used to be kind of a uniquely American thing, or at least a British and American thing, that there was a lot of, or at least the Western world maybe. But is this happening, this division, within the church, is it happening internationally as well? Or is this more where like politics are so hot?
Yeah, maybe we should get more clear on what we mean about the division. What division are you referring to within the church?
So I'm thinking of division of, if you go online, the disagreements between Catholics on practices and, the ideas of what we ought to believe and liturgies and all that kind of stuff that largely, again, I don't know how much is online versus like what's actually being, fought about in real life. But anytime I log into Twitter or whatever, it's always, it's, the Latin this or the Novus Ordo that or Vatican II this, Vatican II that. And then I just wonder, is that an international thing or is that more of an American
Yeah, maybe
thing?
increasingly it seems to me that there is a genuine desire on the part of people who are now willing to take their Christian faith seriously to have it presented to them in a serious manner. So I grew up in a sort of Novus Ordo sloppy church.
Sure.
God bless the people who had good intentions in how they sought to run the parish. But it was, call me Jim instead of Father Jim. It was that sort of thing. Yeah. And why would I have any respect for that? What are we doing here? Is this a representation of Jesus Christ's sacrifice for our sins, or isn't it? So I think if I'm going to come back to this faith, maybe that's part of it, then I really want to come back to a faith that treats itself seriously.
Sure.
I was saying to my friend Ryan today, imagine a priest by your deathbed, how you want him to act.
Yeah.
That's how I want him to act at all times. I want a priest who takes himself and his ministry seriously. And I think people recognize that Gregorian chant is clearly more beautiful than a guitar mass. But this is my opinion, right? Sure. And I think it's correct. And I think every young person agrees with that. So I think some of these divisions might be just necessary until one gives way, but how to do so with charity while loving those we disagree with. I tend to hold to a sort of big tent Catholicism. That is to say, I don't think we should be demanding uniformity where the church permits diversity of opinion or custom. So if somebody tells me, well, because you're a Ukrainian Catholic, which I am, legally, or because you may attend a divine liturgy, that's not really Catholic. I'd say, well, that's not true. And or if you said the Novus Ordo Mass is invalid or something, or that you must pray the Holy Rosary every day to be a good Catholic. I think whenever we demand things that the church doesn't, that's not a good thing.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Because I think that I always think of Chesterton's idea of the playground, right? And you've got the fence that the children can play right up to the fence, and they're still within the fence. They're not breaking the rules. So oftentimes we have maybe sometimes personal experiences or personal opinions that are true, but the church allows for a lot of variance with how we practice our faith, with how we become sanctified. So sometimes I do worry that the online thing is just people with very clear opinions on how things should be done.
And being online, it's easier to kind of curate your experience. And this is true of every sort of niche and genre. If I'm online and my feed starts pitching, I don't know, Metallica videos to me and I'm into Metallica or something, and then all of a sudden my feed looks a certain way. Well, there's something about that online Catholicism or online Orthodoxy or online Protestantism where you can kind of curate the way you wish the church to look. And you think, have you been to your local parish? It's a lot messier when humans are involved. So maybe that is a concern of mine, that just like the converts, those excellent converts of the 80s and 90s of Dr. Scott Hahn and these others, Peter Kraft, who came into the church, they would sometimes say they read their way into the church and they were kind of confronted by what they saw. Maybe something similar is happening, but it's more aesthetic.
Interesting.
So we see all these Gothic churches and this beautiful music, and then we're kind of shocked that it may not be that way, or we're just shocked at the poverty of other people, their annoying habits. And I'm the least easygoing person I've ever met. And that's very unfortunate, and I hope the Lord will continue to work on me. But I've got so many pet peeves, man. I'll go into a church, and if there's a lady and she's talking to her lady friend before Mass, I just want them both excommunicated, or if they're praying the rosary, but they're not a lady or a man, they're praying the rosary, not loud enough for us all to join in and not inaudibly, but just enough that I can hear the squeak of the S's as she prays. excommunicated. Do you know what I mean? So there's something good for me, though, to be put into a place where I have to practice meekness and realize that I also am very annoying to other people. And so you don't get that as much on the online world. You can just close a window or scroll to the next reel.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I think part of it too is that with the growth of social media, YouTube and the like, now there are just so many voices providing their understanding of some of these things and their desires for some of these things that whether they're right or wrong, there are now thousands of people providing a worldview of what the church ought to be or ought to look like or ought to act like, that it starts to become pick your poison or pick your good stuff, but it can lead people down a road that all of a sudden now they're completely not even really Catholic anymore because 100%. Of the things that they are listening to these voices.
Yeah.
So I think that, the growth of social media in some ways has been good, but I'm sure you've noticed too. I mean, there's been a lot of dangers that have come about because of it too.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this lately that social media in some forms are better than others. Some platforms are better than others. Might do to our social nature what pornography does to our sexual desires, namely inflame and pervert them. Mm-hmm. Just like it might be unreasonable to ask somebody to sit before pornography without committing serious sin.
Sure.
And I'm not saying that social media is intrinsically evil in the way that pornography is, but I think the analogy has to do with the effect of it, right? So just like it might be just not helpful or not reasonable to expect somebody not to commit serious sin while looking at pornography, because you can think of reasons one might look at pornography that are legitimate, such as law enforcement or something, right? You see? But it might be unreasonable to expect anybody to engage in social media without committing sins of rash judgment and slander, backbiting and the like. At least this is what we see. And I'm no different, which is why I don't have social media on my phone. I look forward to just sort of exiting that world entirely. So I'm not saying that you can't use it effectively, but I think the majority of people can't. And when you read what Thomas Aquinas has to say about the gravity of sins like slander and detraction and rash judgment, it seems to me that many Catholics treat certain sins with seriousness, like pornography, say, self-abuse, and thank God they do. But we sort of don't seem to care about other sins. It sort of seems to just draw the poison out of us, and all of a sudden we're saying things we shouldn't have said. And now that we've said it and there's an audience, we need to double down on what we've said so we can seem strong and this sort of thing. So. Yeah.
Yeah, and then from there, talking about more inner church stuff, but now kind of a broader cultural reality and the division that we are feeling there. It's an odd moment now because I do think the pendulum from the woke realities is swinging now to the other side. And it seems to me like the division is still very much there. I mean, there are now assassinations going on. There are all kinds of very scary things going on. But do you, in your work, see some of the healing that's also happening in the country as well?
I mean, I see it on a small scale. I see the work of, say, Dr. Bob Schutz with the John Paul II Healing Center, my good friend, Sister Miriam James, my spiritual father, Father Boniface Hicks, Benedictine. I see the work that they're engaged in, and it gives me a lot of hope. But, humility rarely goes viral. And I think that's true of deep inner healing.
Sure.
Like what goes viral is like the sassy takedown attempt you just did on your ideological opponent. That's not big on Twitter, but I am encountering a lot of people who are finding intimacy with Christ and finding that intimacy is bringing about real efficacious healing in a way that's like impacting them and everybody around them in real ways. And that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's just like has to be linked to Christianity. Christianity cannot be merely, and it isn't, a philosophy of life or a moral system. It is, of course, the most intelligent of philosophies and the most beautiful of moral systems, but it's principally a person who we're called to experience intimacy with, and that this isn't something that's relegated for the saints, but it's something like we're all called to. Like we're not all called to receive the stigmata or interlocutions or levitation, but we're actually all meant to experience an ongoing, dynamic, functional intimacy with the Holy Trinity. It's sort of the distinction between standing before, I'm just thinking of this analogy, this might not work, let's try. It's like standing before a dead body, and you know that the person is dead. and then the body wakes up. Imagine the experience you might have in front of that body. It's something like that. Like that's the kind of Christianity. That is like to realize that this isn't a dead moral system or a philosophy of life, but it's a person who knows you and loved you into existence and desires your salvation.
Yeah.
That's what I want to preach.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's interesting. I just interviewed someone about John Henry Newman talking about the illative sense and how we come to, yes. Decide on something or at least appropriate ourselves towards something because we've now had enough opportunities, experiences, reasons, and the like. And I love how he goes about it because, and I know you have a background in apologetics, you clearly love the intellectual life. I do as well. But, reasons can sometimes only go so far, right? Arguments can only go so far. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you really have to start with the heart. And I think that we live in such a broken culture, broken society. People are hurting. And sometimes reasons are not going to be what's going to get them to come to Christ, right?
Yeah, and it's even not the way that we go about believing anything. Like I like to compare what you might call Cartesian epistemology to phenomenal conservatism, which is sort of like the illative sense, right? So if you imagine Cartesian epistemology as saying, unless something is 100% true, and I can know that, then I won't accept it. Mm-hmm. That doesn't get you far out of Plato's cave. According to Nietzsche and Kant, you don't even get the cogito. Like the ladder that you're trying to build falls apart. Whereas if you just sort of treat religion the way you treat literally everything else, namely, if I've got some good reason to think something's true, that at least gives me some justification for thinking the thing's true, and I'm within my epistemic rights to go on believing that until I'm given reason to think I'm wrong. Like that's how I live my life. Like if you pressed me now on how convinced I am that my wife is not a Russian spy, I don't know, like 3 questions in, I wouldn't know what to say to you. I know she isn't. And if you press me to give you good reasons, I wouldn't have it, and I don't need it. Yeah. It's sort of like that with solipsism. It's sort of like that with the brain in the vat sort of thing, where it's like, I have no good reason to think these other fantastic sort of possibilities are true, so I'm not going to bother myself with them. So I was on the streets of Dublin a couple of years ago, and a fella bumped into me because he had seen Pints with Aquinas, and we got into a discussion, and he said he wants to believe in God, but he just can't. He keeps God up on the chalkboard, and he can't decide whether he's true or not. And I said what I think Pascal would say, like, well, just believe in him. Well, what if it's not true? Okay, like be a hypocrite. Like who knows? Just choose to believe in God, and act like somebody who believes in God. And along the way, you might decide you were wrong, and you can give it up then. But just believe in it. What if it's wishful thinking? Okay, like who cares? Like if atheism's true, then what's wrong with wishful thinking? Especially if it'll make your life better. Now, don't get me wrong, I think arguments for God's existence are better than arguments for atheism. I'm not making the claim that they're equal, but I think if one is in a position where they just can't tell, and yet on one side, they have a universe that is created intentionally, that is ordered, that they are somebody who is known and loved, that heaven is a real possibility for them, that life is not meaningless. And on the other hand, you just have, the universe was coughed into existence, and soon there'll be nothing. As the universe continues to expand, it'll hit a point and there'll be heat death, and that'll be it. It's like if I don't have any good reason to think that's true, then I'd be insane to choose that over the thing that would make me hopeful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in your comparison to a relationship is dead right, because I think that we're so nuanced when it comes to friendships and relationships, especially close friendships, because if something were to happen, well, I've known this guy for 10 years, clearly something's going on. I need to figure out what's going on because I know this guy. I love this guy. Just like I love my wife. I love my kids. So if something's, maybe not making total sense to me right away and I can't find the reasons, I still love them, right? I still want to be around them. So in a similar way, the church, sometimes it can be kind of confusing. Maybe there's stuff that, that the church teaches that I don't quite fully get yet. Yes. But I love it anyway. Yeah. And I want to be a part of its family because it gives me meaning in my life. It gives me purpose in my life. It colors the world for me in a way that nothing else can. And I do think that that's actually a big part of what we're seeing with this resurgence of trying to go back to a Christian culture, because really people are realizing like, the Cartesianism didn't work, and it's creating really bad culture.
Well, I mean, you walk around this university and you see these beautiful buildings. I said earlier, I feel like a man. I don't feel like a rat.
Yeah.
And you look at the beautiful architecture throughout Western civilization and you realize that it didn't come from nowhere. It came from a belief in what God is and what man is for. Mm-hmm. And if you change your opinion about that, then your art and your architecture seem to change right along with that. So I think this returning to Catholicism, there's also a desire for heritage, for history.
Yes.
I don't just want to be a monad floating through the void, completely detached from my ancestors.
Yes. We want things to mean something, right? Yeah. I think of Roger Scruton all the time whenever he talks about, he's one of my favorite guys.
Yeah.
So he talks
my nice memory about him. I asked him if he would write an endorsement for my book on pornography, and he wrote back and said, I don't have time. But he wrote back.
Okay.
And that was a joy.
That's great. He has a whole section on pornography.
Yeah, he does.
He's a small book on beauty. It's very,
excellent
very good.
on pornography.
But he talks about how when you build ugly cities, you create ugly people. Like the architecture around you, the culture around you is going to affect you morally.
Yes.
It's going to affect the way you see yourself and the way you see the world.
This is interesting because I think there's this push right now. I just saw this in passing, so I may not have all the details right, from the White House encouraging people not to dress like slobs in the airport.
Really?
You know how people show up in pajamas and it's always disappointing. And I thought, well, that was a good point superficially, but like when you are jamming people into a container where you can't even use your elbows, like you're a bigger fella than me, what's it like being put in a middle seat on an airplane, right? It's almost like, just to your point, like if you're going to treat people like rats, like why do you think we would naturally dress with a sort of dignity?
Exactly.
Yeah, you have no excuse at this school, though. People should be dressing with dignity. Yeah.
We have plenty of space.
Yeah.
I always think also of Christopher Dawson that talks about, culture is downstream from religion, or at least downstream from what you would call the cult, right? And he's talking about ancient cults in particular and the kinds of things that would come about because of it. But then eventually he gets into what Christianity created and the kind of culture that was downstream from it. And oftentimes now we think actually religion is downstream from culture. Right, we start with culture and then we kind of bring it into religion, but really it's what you worship that is the kind of culture you're going to create. So if we're not having good movies, we don't have good music, we don't have good literature, it's because we're not worshiping the very thing that can create those things, can inspire us to those things. I also wanted to talk about a little bit of the issues going on in the culture when it comes to relationships, especially between men and women. Right, we've got a bit of a divide, and I actually just recently saw a new Pew study that was talking about a major decrease in senior and high school girls in their desire to get married ever. So it's dropped by like 13% in about 15, 20 years. Pretty significant. Whereas the guys, it stayed decently steady. And I know you've interviewed people from all spectrums and all over the country. Any insights into like what's going on?
Yeah. I laugh because I think it was about 3 years ago that I decided to stop giving dating advice.
Oh, sure.
Because everyone younger than me looks at me like I'm a complete out-of-touch boomer who clearly has no idea what's going on outside of these walls, and I came to agree with them. I guess I don't know what's going on. It seems to me that both men and women are in a pretty bad place. And I think for a long time, we've sort of both men and women have pointed at men. And I think you can only do that long enough for the pendulum to swing. And like there's plenty of reasons to sort of impugn women, young women, who maybe a lot of them couldn't even be 10% of the mothers we had, and they're expecting something. So I think men are right to be disappointed at the women that they encounter. Not always, but sometimes. And I think so too. You can understand why women might be disappointed in the young men that they meet for different reasons. It seems to me that a woman who hates men is a woman who's been with too many of them, and a man who hates women is one who's been with none of them. Do you see?
Yeah.
I don't know what that
really
is, but when I find these fellas railing on the internet like 12-year-olds screaming into their Xbox headsets about the state of women, I think you've never been you've never had a meaningful relationship with a woman, and that might not be your fault, but it might be. Whereas when there's a sort of resentment in women towards men, it's because they've been hurt too many times. So what's the solution? I don't know, man. I mean, I'm an old man. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and my only options were the people in my town. I didn't know of any other options. Now, of course, I ended up meeting my wife doing missionary work. but I don't envy the experience of having seemingly endless choices. They're not. No, none of them would have you, but it seems that they might. And this idea of keeping your options open seems like a pretty bad idea for different reasons. So I have no advice for young men or women, but good luck. Because marriage is a very sanctifying experience. I've been married for 20 years next year.
Congrats.
And I really like my wife. But we've had a lot of struggles and sufferings, and it is purifying, and it is a difficult vocation. And I think if we have evidence that young men or young women have given up on the idea of marriage, that is like a culture that's given up on itself, given up on life or something like that. So, don't know, man.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because I think we're on the other side of the sexual revolution. And while the actions are still consistently there, the motivation's now gone, if that makes sense. So this desire for liberation or this desire for some kind of freedom, we're kind of tired of it now. We don't want that anymore. But the actions, the habits are still in the culture. It's still in the waters we drink. But we can't stop that. Like that's a very, very difficult thing to just kind of put a dam in the way and say, no more of this. But I don't think the excitingness of what they thought they were accomplishing, even though now it's very clear that they completely messed up a lot of our culture with the idea of liberation. But it's not even like we want liberation anymore. We just are bored.
Yeah.
And we find these little small instances to maybe get a little excitement out of something,
Yeah,
because that's the only thing we have.
I'm massively pessimistic about the future. I mean, as soon as sex robots come out in approximately 5 minutes, like I think we're done.
Yeah.
So I don't have any words of hope or optimism
About that, yeah.
No, I'm really. I think it's really dark, and I don't know what to do except try to redirect my mental energies and sympathies and concerns for those who are proximate to me and those who are under my care.
Yeah.
Whether it be my wife and children and local friends, parish, community. That seems to be the way I'm handling it. And I'm distancing myself increasingly from politics. I keep hitting it into a corner. I want nothing really to do with it. Not because it's not important.
Sure.
But because the caliber of it online leads me to, I don't know, not a great place.
Yeah. I always think of T.S. Eliot, who said that, and he really kind of pointed to World War I and World War II, but that something shattered. Like whatever was whole in our culture or whatever was whole in our worldview broke. And now we can find pieces of what was whole and try to pick those pieces back up. We may never be able to create that wholeness again, but you can at least go find the pieces. And that's what I think of, like, yeah, it's the small things. It's the small ways of being able to help maybe, young people find each other and realize that you can do this and that there is real intimate love out there waiting for you for the rest of your life, But it takes person to person to be able to do that. I don't think we can do it on a national scale.
Yeah, we can't. Maybe I don't know how to stop the complete collapse of Western society, which I think's already happened. Maybe, but I can love my wife well and have children with her and raise them well. And I'm proud to say I like my kids. Yes. They're really funny and interesting and clever and just delightful. And I was always told I wouldn't like my teenagers.
Yes, I was too.
Everyone told me
I love
that.
them.
The day I got married, a woman in a bagel store, one of my groomsmen and I went to a bagel store and she learned that I was getting married and she turned around and went, "Run." And I thought that was deeply saddening. But you can never say, "Oh, I'm different."
Yeah.
No matter how, it's been 20 years in. Even now, if I said, "No, I actually really love my wife," she'd go, "Just wait." Like that cynicism cannot be quenched. Something like that with kids, just wait till they're teenagers. Like, well, now they are. I really like them. Anyway, so I don't know how to stop the downfall of Western civilization, but I am being called to love my wife well, to apologize when I screw up, to grow in virtue, to be faithful to my prayer life, to apologize to my kids when I hurt them, to be attentive to them. So
yeah, I always thought it was terrible advice to tell new young fathers that you shouldn't be friends with your kids. Okay. I think no, absolutely, you should be friends with your kids.
I wonder.
The friendship
what
changes
they meant.
over time.
What do you think they meant by that?
Because you're their guiding light, or you're there to discipline them and get them in the right order. You're
that's
not
true.
their friend.
That's
correct.
true.
But that doesn't mean you can't also be friends.
Yeah,
right?
This is interesting because it's always interesting because I think I agree with both things, right? Of course, like I think when people told me, you can't be friends with your kids, what they maybe had in mind was people who like, when I grew up, I knew a friend whose dad would smoke marijuana.
Oh, sure.
I think maybe what they meant. You know what I mean? Yeah. No, but I just delight in them. I'm just like really impressed with them.
Yes. But that doesn't mean you can't be a disciplinarian. And actually, I think it helps you be a better disciplinarian because they know it's coming from a place of love. Mm-hmm. Like if I'm not hanging out with my kid and letting him know how much I love him, when I do kind of have to, let's not do that anymore. Like he realizes dad's just being a good dad, So I don't think it's good to say don't be friends with your kids.
Right.
That's just my personal thing. But so I think too, what I love to talk about now, of course, is the big news that you're now, going over to Daily Wire.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that process and the decision process of how that ended up coming
Well,
about.
I recorded a video on it. I don't want to bore you or your audience.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
But my wife and I had been invited to move to Croatia by the Greek Catholic bishop in Zagreb. And we were just so honored and loved him and loved the Catholic people there. And we had kind of decided that we would do that. I would teach there for a little school he was starting. And I was just getting pretty tired of running my own business, I would say.
Sure.
So I ended up interviewing Michael Knowles at Daily Wire and was asked to meet with Caleb, who's the founder, right, the CEO of Daily Wire. And just such a good man, normal. Yeah. When you meet somebody like, oh, I like you.
Yeah.
Wow, this is cool. I get you. You know? So I had met with him a few times before. Actually, it was George Farmer, Candace's husband, who brought me in to meet with him maybe a year or two before that because he thought I should. And I couldn't understand why they would want a Catholic show. Mm-hmm. So anyway, when I met with Caleb this time, he asked me what it would look like to come on board. And I wouldn't really want to. I don't even know if I want to keep doing Pints. But then we kept talking, and I said, well, it would have to be a fully Catholic show. Like I wouldn't, if you were saying to me like behind the scenes, obviously you can't be Catholic. Like you can interview some Catholics, but obviously it has to appeal to our broader Christian audience. If he said that to me, I absolutely would have said no. Yeah. He said, no, we want it to be exactly what it is now.
Wow.
Now, I don't even think this is cynical. I just think, they're open capitalists. I think they realize that Catholicism is hot right now and they can milk it.
Sure.
And I'm okay being milked. That's great. That's going to go well. I remember I was meeting with the COO over there, wonderful fella, but he said, what can I help? Like, what do you want? This is after we had agreed to it. What do you want to do? And I said, I want to preach the world for Christ and invite everybody to join Holy Mother Church. He said, okay. I said, are you Christian? He went, no. And I went, all right, well, that's what I want to do. And he said, well, I can help you do that. So that's it. It's really excited about the opportunity. And the more time I spend with the folks there, the more excited I am about it.
Yeah, that's great.
I really, like, if I'm just there for 3 years, or say, and I have a larger platform to be able to invite people to become Catholic, I'll be thrilled.
That's awesome.
And as soon as, if Catholicism is no longer hot and they'd like me to leave, that's fine.
Keep preaching.
It's really fine. Like my wife and I will go somewhere else and do something else.
Yeah. So with the decision between, within the Catholic world, as you know, there's kind of Catholics creating content for Catholics, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of that. But what I love about this decision, and I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts about it, is that there's this switch that happens, that now there's a much broader audience. And really, that's where you're preaching. That's where you're trying to reach.
Here's an example. So when will this be going out, this show? Do you know?
It'll be the first week of December.
Okay, so here's what's really cool. And I know there's a lot of people who are really frustrated with this decision that I made. And I can understand if people were to say, I hate that you're joining a big corporation. I really doubt you're going to maintain your voice. I doubt that Pints with Aquinas is going to be the same podcast. I'm really nervous. If somebody said that, I would fully agree with that sentiment and wouldn't understand someone who didn't have it. That makes complete sense to me. Yes. Like if someone I was watching regularly, like Brian Holdsworth or Trent Horn, was about to join some company that I knew nothing about, I'd be really nervous. That I think is fine. What I don't think is fine is the slander of, well, I hope you got more than 30 shekels. Now, the first time I saw that, I actually thought it was very clever. And I was tempted to say, oh, way more. the 8th time I saw it, it just feels like a regurgitating slander, really.
Yeah.
It's slander, actually. And since slander's a serious sin, you should be really careful before you do that, you know?
Yeah.
So if somebody says, well, you've sold out, well, that means something. It doesn't just mean you're making more money now than you were, because I am, and I'm glad to.
Sure.
It means you're compromising on your beliefs. That's what they mean. And I'm not, but even if I were, you're actually not in a place to know that. So to accuse me of that is rash judgment at best, you see? So I look forward to convincing people of goodwill that Pints will be exactly as it has been. And here's what I'm getting to and why I asked you when this is going out. The very first episode we're doing is going to be a big interview with Dr. Scott Hahn. We've got this beautiful set that we've created. It's going to be all about Christmas, all about Catholicism, and it's going to be Daily Wire's only giant Christmas episode.
Wow.
I don't know why that doesn't excite you.
That's awesome.
I mean, obviously it's because the Jews are just trying to warm you up so that they can somehow subvert you. I'm joking. But this is the kind of stuff you hear online. You're like, okay, well, there's no way to argue against this. This is silly. But one thing I would say to people of goodwill is, okay, suppose I haven't sold out, and suppose I can reach more people now than I've ever reached before, and that the show will remain as it's always remained. And of course, people might like the show, they might not like the show. If they didn't like it then, they won't like it now. But if they did then, well, what if I could reach more people and it wouldn't change in the way you're telling me it's going to change? Like, I'll get political or be controlled by the Jews or something like that. Like, is that exciting? And I think some people would say no. Like some people would rather me sound like Nick Fuentes on day one and just hammer Ben Shapiro constantly and convert nobody than do what I've always done and by God's grace and this elevated platform convert 1 million souls. They would probably rather. Now, I think that might be the loud minority. I think most people are people of goodwill. Mm-hmm. They aren't people who spend 24 hours a day online, and they would say, no, of course. Like, if this is going to be as it's always been, we're thrilled for you. Yeah. So I've got a lot of that as well. And
that's awesome. So. Well, the way I see it too, I mean, if the more we can get the gospel to more people, it's worth the sacrifices. I mean, that's just the reality of it.
It's worth sacrifices. It's not worth some compromises.
Right.
So so long as I don't choose to do that.
Yeah.
And that was part of the negotiation process. Like, I kept coming back to them even after the third meeting. I remember saying, okay, I don't understand. Like, why do you want a Catholic podcast?
Yeah.
Why not just find some young guy, like, who's hungry? I'm not hungry, I'm old, I'm tired. Find some young fella, build his platform, have him interview whoever you want to interview. So it took a while for them to convince me that they really want to do this.
Wow.
And so I'm really jazzed, genuinely excited. A lot of prayer went into this, a lot of talking with my spiritual father and praying with my wife and consulting really trusted advisors. So we'll see what happens.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear too that your concern about politics being the leading role here, because I'm just happy that a truly Catholic show is going to get a bigger audience.
I don't know if I'm allowed to share this or not, but I will, and we'll see what happens. Many people, maybe myself included, thought that Daily Wire told Jordan Peterson to become more political.
Oh, really?
But since I'm now in the know, it's actually not at all that at all.
Really?
It's kind of the opposite. If anything, it was like, hey, what if we did those things, the psychology stuff?
Yeah.
So I think what happened was Jordan felt that he saw the demise of his own country, Canada, and saw what was going on and felt compelled to speak. But he certainly wasn't compelled by the Daily Wire.
Wow.
So I think people saw him join the Daily Wire, get super political, and then look at me about to join and go, oh, please don't do that.
I see.
And I fully agree with that sentiment. I have no desire, nor does anybody have any stomach to hear my stupid half-baked ramblings that wouldn't be helpful or coherent.
Awesome. Well, one last question that we ask all of our guests, and it's kind of a big question, but it's the mission of the college is to transform culture in America. And so we always ask, if you were to have either a student in front of you or someone that you wanted to offer a little mentorship on how they could transform culture in America, what would it be?
Yeah, it's so unimpressive. I don't.
It's not a big goal at all.
I don't know what else to say except that it's got to begin with what's under your control. You know, you've heard of the circle of influence versus the circle of concern.
Sure.
And when we concern ourselves primarily with what we cannot influence, our circle of influence actually shrinks because we're not investing in time into the thing that we could have controlled.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, maybe this is just how I try to cope in a chaotic society, but I just would say to that person, like, get serious about the business of repentance and growth in virtue. Surround yourself, let's say it's a fella, with good men, preferably those who are better than you, who can encourage you and motivate you to be the best that you can be. And get married before you're ready, and have more kids than you can afford, and then bury yourself into some Catholic bubble. Now, all of those statements are, of course, hyperbolic, and I would nuance them, but something like that.
Yeah.
We can nuance them if you want.
Let's do it.
Well, it's just, obviously, I don't mean get married before you're ready. Clearly,
Sure,
clearly,
sure.
it's a big you ought to have some sense of the responsibilities of marriage and whether or not you're up to the task. I understand that. But, you might feel similar to me, that if I was waiting until I was quote unquote ready for marriage, I may not be married yet.
Oh, absolutely.
And if I was to wait until okay, we're now ready for kids, I may have waited 10, 15 years. And I also think when we talk about bubbles, I think this is pejorative.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it's just how humans have always lived forever, actually, to live around like-minded people who share their loves and their hates and their faith.
Yeah.
And so I think you should definitely do that.
Yeah.
I don't mean to close yourself off from the world in the sense of no longer evangelizing or intermingling, obviously, but I think, focusing on yourself. I'll end with this. St. Ephrem the Syrian, doctor of the church, I pray a prayer of his in the morning and at night. And both have an emphasis on seeing my own sin. So in the morning prayer, it'll say, help me to see my own sin and not to judge my brethren. And then I pray his prayer to the Holy Spirit every night, and it says, if I have made fun of my brother's sin when my own faults are countless. That seems to me to sum up social media, right? It's just me making fun of other people for being stupid or idiotic or depraved, while my own sins are countless. The point, have mercy on me, a sinner. So I think the path of repentance and intimacy with a loving God who's all too ready to forgive you is where to start.
Love that. So all that I would say, it's take risks, right? Be willing
Swing
to
for the fences.
Swing for the fences.
Yeah.
Jump into life 2 feet first. It's perfectly fine.
Now's the time.
Jump into a faith in God 2 feet first.
Yeah.
All the things that bring meaning to your life, don't let safetyism get in your way.
Yeah, and dream big, right? Read the writings of Jose Maria Escriva, right? What I said to that COO, I didn't say, I'd love to maybe convert a few people if it's possible. It's no, with God's grace, let's win the world for Jesus Christ. And my executive producer, who's now with me, Maria, beautiful woman, she loves Jesus Christ. She just texted me the other day. And she's like, I think you need to be spending time in adoration and reading, and I will too. And we just need to give this to Jesus Christ. But this big mission of how many souls could be reached for Christ?
Yes.
I see that in Bishop Barron. I see that in Ascension Press and others who are let's just proclaim Christ to as many people as possible. So dream big, swing hard, stay humble.
I love that. I also love the idea of what you can control, because sometimes I've seen where there's such a big concern about the world mechanisms and what's going on, who's controlling what and what's going on. And I'm like, yeah, but the only thing you can actually do is what's in the same roof. That's
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Jason
Whether
Everett,
it's the church or your home, that's...
Jason Everett put it this way when we were talking about the corruption in the church or something like that. He said, all right, suppose I tracked down went down every rabbit trail, and I finally got to the bottom, so that I myself have a complete and full understanding of the state of the church, the corruption in the church, etc. Then what? Unless I'm in a position to actually effectuate some things, when I die and stand before our Lord, I have to give an account of my life, of every word I have misspoken and so on. And so that's the business that seems uninteresting to us, but that's the business that we're commanded to begin being interested in.
Yeah. Humility and sanctification. Absolutely. Well, Matt, thank you so much, man. This has been an awesome conversation. Congrats again, on the new role.
Thanks.
And I'm sure we'll chat again. So I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
We hope you enjoyed the Benedictine Dialogues, a production of Benedictine College in Atchison, Kansas. To catch all the latest and support our growing platform, visit media.benedictine.edu. And be sure to recommend this show to your friends and family. Help us to transform culture in America, one conversation at a time.